you've got to remember while you were busy growing up, your parents were growing old.
Welcome to the Better Than Yesterday Everyday Podcast, where we cover anything related to behavior change that will increase your long-term wellness and happiness. And now, here are your hosts, personal trainer and RNs, Matt and Jenna Lane.
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Better Than Yesterday Everyday Podcast. My name is Matt.
And my name is Jenna.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We drop this bad boy every Tuesday, 5:30 Central Standard Time.
AM.
I really appreciate you telling them that. If you're new to this podcast, thank you for being here. If you are a regular, welcome back. Today we have a topic that is kind of sensitive, and we're dedicating this episode to a friend. But first off, Jenna, how you feeling?
I think this is going to be a good podcast.
Yeah, I agree.
Meaningful.
Yeah.
Deep.
For sure. With this podcast, we're all about implementing behavior change for your long-term wellness and happiness. The beautiful thing about this podcast, I think, is that we are not pigeonholed into one area. You know, I think we both didn't want this to be a podcast to be 100% about, all right, this is, you lift a barbell and life is better. I think there's so many different facets of wellness and behavior change that can be explored. And I'm glad that we do things like this. And shout out to Mel from Mel's Fitness Journey. You guys have heard us mention him many times before. This episode is dedicated to you, brother. We love you. My heart is with you. I've been calling him every single day, contacting him every single day, that is. Mel told me last week he lost his dad. He lost his mom early 2000, I believe, with breast cancer. But he found his dad. And, he contacted me not long after. And, I just feel for him, and we felt for him since he called, and we just wanted to take time to dedicate this episode to you, Mel, to your dad, and then talking about the concept of mom and dad. And this is my biggest fear, this topic of losing my parents. That's the biggest fear, aside from losing you, of course.
Sure.
Losing my parents.
Yeah, and it's a part of life.
It is. I've often questioned, I don't know how I'm going to do.
I don't think you're going to do well.
I really don't know how I'm going to do. So I related a lot to whenever Mel, confided and, called for support. And so anyway, long story short, that's what we're going to talk about, mom and dad. And that. So at the top of every show, we hit you with our gratitude point. Our gratitude point is something that is meant to shift your perspective. Whatever it is for you, whether it be large or small, the point of it is to pull you up out of the dumps, to realize, things aren't as bad as they seem. And I'll go first. That my gratitude point is, I'm really glad that I was always taught to do the right thing. I haven't always done the right thing in every circumstance, but I was always taught by my parents to do the right thing, no matter what. Even if you get the short end of the stick or whatever, just do the right thing. And a quick story, I remember I took somebody home, gave them a ride home from work one day. Didn't really know this person very well, worked around them, but didn't really know them well. And I dropped them off at their house. And they said, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I owe you." And I was like, "No, you're good." It was sort of like, it was just that thing that you say, "Hey, I owe you." And I was like, "No, you're good." And that person stopped, and they were like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I mean, you're good." And that stuck with me for some reason. I think because, that person sort of expected to have to pay back for it. And for me, it was just the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I've always held on to that. And you and I have talked about that in our relationship, that it's not a give and take thing. When I first started in this relationship, I didn't make any money. You fronted the bills, and you've never had this like me versus you owe me type thing. And I appreciate you supporting that unintentionally. You know, I think that's just how you are too. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate just always thinking and knowing that doing the right thing is the right thing to do.
I like it.
Yeah, right.
Well, mine is, if any of you have met me and have spent time with me in the evening, you know that I start about 8 or 8:30, start stressing out about, I have to go to bed. Even though we don't go to bed till like 10, I kind of freak out about being home and being settled and being able to fall asleep. And last night, Matt and I started talking and just kind of wandering in our conversation, and we talked and talked and talked until like 12:30. And Matt this morning made the comment that he just kept thinking that I would get up and just disappear and go to bed.
I was just shocked. Like 3 times I remember thinking, I cannot believe she's still up talking, because for me to stay up late, it's not uncommon. For you to stay up late, it's a rarity.
Yeah. And for example, we had an impromptu New Year's Eve party here, and I was at our house. There were many people here at the house, and I was in bed asleep, I think before 11.
Yeah.
With the earplugs in, and I was happily in sleepy bliss with everyone 10 feet away, having a good time.
So what is your actual gratitude point?
No, just that we had that conversation. Like, we got so into the conversation last night, I had no idea what time it was.
Okay.
And I appreciate those conversations. For whatever reason, we tend to have those right when we're trying to go to bed.
Yeah, it's always super late.
I just appreciate that. Sometimes I learn things about my own mind and what's going on, just to be able to say it out loud kind of sorts it out for me. Even if you're not giving feedback, sometimes I just kind of ramble and figure things out, untangle my mind.
That's true.
Myself.
That's true.
And I appreciate those conversations. Thank you for being patient, because I always seem to have them right when we're about to fall asleep.
Well, I just have them every single day, all throughout the day, so it's kind of reciprocated. Diving into this podcast, I think starting out with, if you have your parents, or if you're close to your parents, or whoever your parent figure is, hell, maybe you don't even have a parent figure. Maybe the closest thing you've ever had is a friend or a sibling. Whoever your parents is, whoever your mom and dad is, that's what we're talking about. We are talking about mom and dad specifically, and I know that family is a collective thing for a lot of people, but I'm talking mom and dad, the people you came from. Anyway, I think that it's very, very easy for even myself to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of whatever you're doing, whether you're working just a 9-to-5 job, or if you're trying to build a business, or if you're just busy with your own life, if you're in school, whatever. I think it's just so easy to let time pass you by, let the moments and memories fade by without using them. And Jenna and I are always reminded, and I think we're very good about stopping whenever my mom or dad stops by the house, to indulge in that time. Just knowing that time is not always going to be there.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I think there's going to be questions that we have after our parents are gone that we're never going to get answers to. And sometimes just sitting and listening to what they have to say, even if at the time it doesn't really seem that important, that conversation is locked away, that hopefully you'll remember sometime in the future, to be able to reminisce and know those answers, at least the ones that came up in conversation before.
I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm fearful of losing my parents, is not being able to ask the question about the stories, the insignificant things. And I think we've talked about this on the podcast or in the videos on the Matt and Fitness YouTube channel, but the inability to ask the question about whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, when I was 3 years old, when we went there, who was there? Or, did we fly? Did we drive? Just the trivial little small things that creep up in your head on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
Yep. the ability to not have that, on top of the fact that they've, of course, brought you up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's something that I've heard before that kind of sticks with you. Something along the lines that you've got to remember while you were busy growing up, your parents were growing old.
I've never heard that.
And, time changes everybody. Sometimes I feel like the way our family was when I was a kid, like, to me, like, I'm growing up, but no one else is changing, or in my mind, no one else is aging. But really, as much as I've aged, our families have aged too. And sometimes you tend to forget that.
Yeah, you get caught up in your own world, and it's easy for that time to fly by.
Yeah. Yeah, I think life just kind of, you get into your routine and you get focused on what you're doing, and time passes a lot faster than you realize sometimes. And, I found stopping and thinking about what I'm grateful for and what's important to me helps me really kind of refocus and realign the time that I'm spending. And sometimes it's not even just our parents, it's just what's in front of you, what's important, just even some of the simple things of, our dogs are really important to us.
Yeah.
And I had a realization one day of, I can't remember if I petted all three of them today. And it made me realize, okay, as stupid as that sounds, we get caught up in what we're doing, and we're their whole life. And you've got to remember that. And so I make a point every day to give them individual attention. That's something really important to me that I had a realization about a while back. I think just stopping and realigning, maybe not every day, but every so often, about, what you're grateful for and what's important to you. And, even looking to the future of, like, 20 years from now, what am I not going to have that I'm going to miss that I need to focus on now?
Yeah, that makes sense. And another portion of the show, Matt's ADD moment. Is it pet or petted every day, the dogs? I petted the dogs. I pet the dogs.
I think it's pet.
I think you're right.
What did I say? Did I say pet?
I think you said petted. But it was just, that's where my head went. I listened to you and didn't want to interrupt you, but I agree. I agree with you. It's that individual time, that individual designated time for each dog,
Yeah.
And we've said that before, like we don't separate, like we don't leave the house without saying I love you, giving you a kiss, giving you a hug. And it's the same thing with my parents. And I think it's extremely important too that if you have any grudges, or if you came up with parents that you've learned to you have to sort of separate yourself or know the balance of time, that I hope that you have that ability to still balance that while also being able to appreciate the time and not just 100% cut them off. I mean, I don't know what your situation is. Obviously, that's unique to you. But if you still have some semblance of a relationship, I think that's a tough thing to balance.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to still remember that there is balance. And yeah, sorry, I'm sort of going off in the weeds, but and what sprung this thought was my dad came over yesterday, and my dad holds on to a lot of stuff. He's a very sentimental person.
Yeah.
He's not a pack rat, but he holds on to a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
and what I love about every single item that he shows us is that there's a very detailed story behind it.
Yep.
And I appreciate that, even though some of the things that some of the items, I don't have that sentimental value to. So I really, okay, whatever. Thanks.
Right.
But the story is what's important.
Yeah.
Because if it's important enough for him to remember this very specific details, 20, 30, 40 years later, then it's important for me to listen to and try to, plant that in my mind to remember later.
Yeah. I think it's very easy for younger people to, be like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I'll keep it and, toss it or something like that. And I've told him before, like there are some things that I'm going to keep and there's some things that I'm absolutely going to throw away. I love you to death, but and I'm not saying I'm going to throw this away, but he brought us yesterday an envelope opener that he's had for like 25.
Oh, that's something we're
35
definitely
years.
always going to keep.
Yes, but what I'm saying is like some of these things are like very insignificant. They're just things that he's used. He's like, hey, I had this for 25 years when I worked at the bank. And one thing that, by the way, if you are listening to this podcast, you can watch this podcast on the thebtyepodcast podcast on YouTube, so you can see what I'm actually holding up here. But I'm holding a little booklet that was from 1966. My dad wrote down everything he spent his money on. He even labeled it, first quarter of college. This is when he went off to college. Right here on 10/1/66, he spent 85 cents on a date. I mean, this was so significant to him. And the reason that it was significant to him was that he paid his way through college. He is that classic story of, oh, I walked to school in the snow. It's that story. And, he paid his way through college and came back. I think he went with only $4,000 and came back after getting the degree with $800 in his pocket. So he sold Coke cans and all that. But my point in saying that for me, this little booklet is that story every single time. Mm-hmm. My mom gave Jenna the ring that she wears on her right hand, and just the stories behind it, I think, are just so important. And I think, if someone else were to see this book just laying there, they wouldn't think a thing about it.
Yep.
But for me, it's a big deal. It's a big, big deal. So if there are any of those things that you can get your hands on for your loved ones, for your mom, from your dad, I highly encourage you to get your hands on it and hold on to it. And especially while they're still alive, you don't feel like it's important. You don't feel like it's as important. But I know that this thing will quadruple in value in my brain when he's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because those are the only pieces you're going to have left.
Exactly. Learn the stories. I think it's critical to learn the stories 1,000%. Little side note, Dad, if you're listening, I want to tell you, you were 1,000% right. This Christmas, my dad was so dead set on getting me an air fryer, and I was just like, okay, that's cool, but A, you don't have to, and B, like, probably not going to use it. It's okay. But he did. He was so proud of it, and he brought it over. And even the day that he gave it to me, I was thankful, but I was like, we ain't ever going to use this. We use that friggin' thing 2-3 times a week. So, Dad, you were spot on. You were correct. We use it all the time.
Yeah, that honestly, seeing the joy on his face when he came in with that air fryer to give to you, means more than the air fryer itself.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah, because he was so excited to give that to you. And it was a great find.
Yeah, it really was.
I mean, yeah, it really was. It does like 700 different functions or something crazy. So.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to link Mel's video. Mel put a video up, I think only 2 days after his dad's death, just sort of expressing, and it's a quick video on his channel, just a little shout out to Mel's Fitness Journey on YouTube. I will plug that in the description below, whether you're watching or listening to this. So go check him out, give him some love. We are definitely going to have him on the podcast at some point. Just sort of been waiting on the correct timing for him, even before this situation, this loss. So anything else you got in your head?
I don't think so. I mean, I think sometimes you just need to slow down and appreciate your story and how much your parents molded you into the person that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about that, about my parents are both in their 70s, and I'm 30 years old. So I'm an old soul naturally. I think that's just sort of how I came up. And, this is not me talking me up. This is talking my parents up, honestly. But I'm such a person that, like, I believe in honor. I believe in your word. I believe in doing the right thing, like I said. And I owe that to my parents. That's something that will continue on for the rest of my life. I will have an impact on anybody I come in contact with because of them. So I thank you, Mom and Dad, for raising me how you have.
I thank you both too.
I don't want to drag this podcast out. Short, sweet, to the point. Any sort of wrap up?
I don't know. I just, you got to stop and appreciate what you've got sometimes.
Yep.
And I think stopping and understanding what is it that you have right now. If you lost today, what would devastate you, and focus on that and spend some time on that. Sometimes you just get so into the hustle and bustle of every day, you don't stop to appreciate how you got there or what maintains your hustle and bustle. And even, I make it a point every day to stop and just look you in the face and spend that moment of, I really do love you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Because you never know if that's the last time you're going to see each other or not.
Yep.
And, I don't, like I've told you before, when you leave early in the morning to go to the gym, I want you to wake me up every morning, kiss me goodbye, tell me you love me, I'll tell you I love you, and then I'll go on about your day and I'll go back to sleep. But I don't ever want us to leave without that.
Yeah.
Because it's important to me, and there's going to be potentially someday when I'm not going to have that, and I don't want to regret not having that memory or that time.
Yeah. And for people like myself that are, fairly driven people and trying to build something, if you're out there and you're listening, if you ever question, should I be taking this time? There's more things I could be doing. I should not be sitting here with my wife, with my dad, looking at these stupid things that he has in this box while we're sitting in the kitchen. This feels like a waste of time. If you question that, let me answer you real quick. Hell no. That is not a waste of time. There's so much value in that. So capitalize on that time. That's only going to benefit you and help you build things later on. Never look at that as a waste of time. I damn sure don't look at that as a waste of time. There's value in that.
Yep. I agree.
All right. I think that's it.
I think so too.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate you. If you want to do us a favor, leave a comment here on YouTube of how you felt about this episode. Do you agree? What's your situation? Tell us. If you want to help us out, iTunes, leave us a review, positive or negative. We truly appreciate you. It is the lifeblood of a podcast. And lastly, subscribe to this podcast, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, whatever. Subscribe to us. That way you know every time we put up a video or a podcast. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll talk to you next week.
This has been the Better Than Yesterday Everyday Podcast. We want to thank you for listening and invite you to subscribe to the show as well. And follow Matt Lane Fitness on YouTube. Until next time, you don't have to be perfect. Just be better than yesterday every day.
That was good.
Nice pen.
Yeah, Dad gave us these pens.
Yeah.